The rain fell in a soft, rhythmic drizzle against the dimly glowing streetlights, casting a golden shimmer on the slick pavement. Daniel Carter pulled his coat a little tighter around himself as he stepped into Rosie's Diner, a small, old-fashioned eatery nestled in a quiet corner of town, almost hidden from the world. With a shake of his umbrella, he rid it of the lingering raindrops before adjusting the cap on his head. His footsteps were steady but unassuming as he slid into a booth near the large window, gazing outside at the city streets bathed in the melancholic glow of night. No one in the diner had any idea that the man who had just walked in was none other than Daniel Carter, the CEO of Horizon Group, a multi-billion-dollar empire that owned numerous restaurant chains, including this very one. But tonight, he wasn't here as a wealthy businessman who inked million-dollar deals with a signature. He wasn't here as the man with influence, power, or prestige. Tonight, he was just another customer, seeking a simple meal in a place that held a quiet charm. He picked up the slightly worn menu, running his fingers over its edges as he took in his surroundings. The diner had a lived-in feel, red vinyl booths showing signs of age, checkered flooring faded from years of customers coming and going. And yet, there was something undeniably warm about the place. The way the staff moved, exchanging friendly conversations with the regulars, the comforting scent of home-cooked meals lingering in the air, it all felt so real. A waitress, probably in her early 20s, approached his table with a welcoming but polite smile. Her name tag read Emily. "Hi. Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get for you tonight?" she asked, her voice carrying a practiced cheerfulness, but Daniel noticed something else. A heaviness in her eyes. A weight she was trying to conceal behind a forced smile. He studied her for a second before responding gently, "I'll have the special." Emily nodded quickly, scribbling on her notepad before hurrying away, but Daniel's gaze lingered. Years in business had sharpened his instincts. He could read people like an open book. And right now, Emily was struggling. He didn't know what it was, not yet, but something told him he was about to find out. As he waited, the familiar sounds of laughter, clinking plates, and lively chatter filled the air, creating an ambience of comfort. But then something unexpected. A muffled sob. Soft but unmistakable. Daniel turned his head just as the kitchen door swung open for the briefest moment. His eyes caught sight of Emily standing near the counter, her back turned, shoulders trembling slightly. A cook, clearly concerned, glanced in her direction, his expression a mix of sympathy and helplessness. "Hey, am you okay?" Emily wiped her face quickly, straightening up. "Yeah, just a long day, that's all," she said with a small, forced chuckle, brushing it off as nothing. Daniel set his glass of water down, his appetite momentarily forgotten. He had met countless employees in his career, had seen people from all walks of life. But something about Emily's silent suffering struck a chord deep inside him. Without thinking twice, he stood up and made his way toward the counter. An older woman, likely in her 50s, stood at the register. Her name tag read Marcia, and she regarded him with a wary yet motherly expression. "Need anything, hun?" Daniel hesitated for a beat before nodding toward the kitchen. "Is she okay?" Marcia let out a heavy sigh, her gaze softening as she followed his line of sight to Emily. "That girl's got a heart of gold," she said in a hushed voice. "Works double shifts, barely takes a break. But she's been having a rough time lately." "What happened?" Daniel asked, his voice low, careful. Marcia hesitated, then leaned in slightly. Her mom passed a few months back, left behind a mountain of medical bills. And Emily? She's been trying to take care of her little brother all on her own, but she's barely holding it together. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. His eyes flickered back to Emily, who had returned to the floor, a weary yet determined smile plastered on her face as she delivered food to a table. He had seen financial hardship before. He had lived it. Once upon a time, he had been the one struggling, sleeping in his car, working endless shifts just to survive. He knew the exhaustion, the desperation. That struggle had shaped him, driven him. And now he was in a position to help. When Emily returned with his plate, she had composed herself, or at least, she was trying to. "Here you go," she said softly, setting the food down with a small nod. Daniel didn't touch his meal. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at her. "Emily, are you okay?" She blinked, caught off guard by the genuine kindness in his tone. "Oh yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." He tilted his head slightly, reading between the lines. "You don't look fine. And you don't have to pretend." For a fleeting second, the walls she had so carefully built around herself crumbled. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she quickly blinked them away, forcing out a weak chuckle. "It's just life, you know," she said, shaking her head. "But I'll be okay." Daniel studied her for a long moment, and right then and there, he made a decision. "I'd like to speak to your manager." Emily's face turned pale as she stepped back slightly, a look of worry crossing her features. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Daniel smiled reassuringly, his voice warm and calm. "Not at all," he said with a gentle shake of his head. "In fact, I think you're doing something incredibly right." A few minutes passed, and then the manager, a burly man named Rick, walked over to their table with a concerned look on his face. "Is there something wrong with your meal, sir?" he asked, his eyes scanning the table. Daniel, never one to hide his identity when it mattered, took off his cap, revealing his face fully. Rick's eyes widened in recognition, his mouth slightly agape. "Mr. Carter," he stammered, surprised. Emily furrowed her brow, looking back and forth between Daniel and Rick, clearly confused. "Wait, you know him?" Rick nodded slowly, clearly still processing the moment. "This is Daniel Carter," he said, his voice full of awe. "He owns this restaurant and about 100 others." Emily's eyes grew wide in shock. "You're the CEO," she whispered in disbelief. Daniel gave a simple nod. "I am. And tonight I came in to see how things were running." He paused for a moment, his gaze softening as he continued. "But what I found was something much more important." He turned his attention back to Rick. "How long has Emily been working here?" Rick straightened up, his voice filled with pride. "About 2 years. She's one of the hardest workers I've ever had." Daniel nodded thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving Emily. "Does she qualify for a promotion?" Rick blinked, taken aback by the question. I suppose so. But we haven't had the chance to discuss it." Daniel didn't let him finish, his voice firm and decisive. "Effective immediately, Emily is the new manager. She'll get a raise and full benefits." Emily gasped, her hands instinctively covering her mouth in disbelief. "What? No, I don't even know what to say." Daniel smiled warmly. "Say yes." Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded, unable to speak at first. "Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much." The power of one small act of kindness rippled through the diner, a sense of excitement and joy filling the air. As the chatter of the staff buzzed around, Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, handing it to Emily with a calm smile. "This is my personal number," he said gently. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call me." Then, with a quiet but deliberate motion, Daniel pulled out a check, scribbled a number on it, and slid it across the table to her. Emily hesitated, her breath catching in her throat as she glanced down at the check. Her hands shook slightly as she saw the number written there, $10,000. "Mr. Carter, I can't accept this," she stammered, her voice shaky with emotion. Daniel met her gaze, his tone firm yet compassionate. "Yes, you can," he said simply. "Think of it as an investment in your future. You're not alone, Emily. And you never have to be." Tears freely slid down her cheeks as she took the check in her trembling hands. "No one has ever done something like this for me before," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel smiled softly, his heart warmed by the connection they shared in that moment. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "all we need is for someone to see us, to remind us that we matter." Emily wiped her tears away, her heart full in a way it hadn't been in months. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Daniel smiled, his voice gentle. "I think I do." And with that, he turned to leave, stepping out into the night. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and fresh, the world outside seemingly renewed. He had come to the diner expecting nothing more than a quiet meal. But instead, he had found a reminder of something far more valuable. True success is not measured by what you earn, but by how you choose to give back. And tonight, a simple act of kindness had changed a life, one small gesture at a time.